My mother has, time to laugh, not cry, okay. My mother, Ansley Thompson Winkler, was a woman who loved life. Her greatest happiness occurred when she provided for others, whether it was preparing a spectacular meal for my family during a visit to see her and Dad, purchasing a special card, or writing a letter to console or to rejoice. Mom did it with love. Watching the glow in her eyes when grandchildren visited and played games with her was the greatest gift one could ask for. I can recall some challenging times when I was much younger and Mom did not judge me, but found ways to comfort and help me to redefine what was in my best interest at the time. Mom offered her advice while leaving room for me to make my own decisions to grow from. Mom was with me when I scored my first basket in basketball, struck out the first time playing baseball, and ran my second marathon, struggling with cancer and complications related to it when I introduced her to important people in my life. I cannot think of any time when Mom was not either physically or spiritually present. As I share these words that come from the heart, I know that Mom has her arms wrapped around me to protect me and give me the strength to continue reading this presentation. Mom was a passionate Washington Redskin fan and a loyal Democrat. I can recall my father taking us to Disneyland on New Year's Eve in 1972, and we were more focused to listening to the radio than to hear the game than enjoying many of the spectacular rides. Watching games with Mom was always a treat as she shared her passion for the team in burgundy and gold. Mom was an avid supporter of President Bill Clinton, and her loyalty was rewarded while she and my father lived in Hilton Head. And she saw President Clinton on the neighboring golf course and ran up to him to shake his hand and get his autograph. I can't imagine what the Secret Service agent was thinking at the time as she dashed towards the president. President Clinton then smiled and then proudly posed next to my mother, enabling my father to capture the moment on paper. Looking back, I can see times when I took for granted the unconditional love my mother provided every day of her life. I can also see times when my actions brought her smiles and tears of happiness, and I am grateful for that. As I seek ways to cope with Mom's loss, this is a tough one. I was recently reminded of the ability to see Mom in the beauty of a sunset, a colorful rainbow, an old picture, or a letter from Mom. In the end, I realized that Mom will always be in my heart, and I have the ability to connect with her during troubling times as well as the joyful ones. I recently saw a reflection of Mom in the backyard as I saw a large deer struggling to get out of the backyard and then miraculously leaping over the fence to find freedom. Mom is now free from physical pain and suffering and is now enjoying a new state of being filled with unconditional love and support. Mom will continue to share love with us as we join together to celebrate her life or spend time in reflection recalling the great times we enjoyed with her. Thank you, Mom, and I will always love you.
I knew I should have gone first because you're going to hear a couple of stories over again, unfortunately, in a slightly different version. Mom was my teacher, my motivator, my cheerleader, and my caretaker. She did have very strong political views, and she was an avid sports fan, as you heard. She was a loving, devoted wife to my father for 57 years. She was not only a teacher to the hundreds of students that she's taught in the different states, but was a teacher in life to my brother and myself. She taught Don and I right from wrong. She taught us to have good morals and good thoughts. She taught us to never give up in life. She taught us to be a doer and not a quitter. Mom was a very good Christian woman. Don's going to shoot me for saying this next line. But I very seldom heard her curse. I think there were only twice that I heard her curse. Once was about Tom Landry and the Dallas Cowboys. And the other was about the other side of the political party that she did not agree with. She was a huge, huge sports fan and had the energy of a kid. In 2003, I went to visit them in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. The Fresno State Bulldogs were playing Tennessee in Knoxville, and being a Fresno State fan as we lived there, I had wanted to go to the game. Mom, being 68 years old, said to me, "Jim, if you're going, get me a ticket too, because you're not going alone." Even as an adult, she felt it was her place to protect me and not to let me go into a visiting team stadium wearing the wrong colors. As we parked the car with Fresno flags, Mom was very sure to tell the parking attendant, "Please protect this car. I know it has Fresno gear, but I am a Tennessean. This is my hometown, and I'm here to support my son and my husband who worked at Fresno State." Even then, she wanted to make sure that my car was not going to be damaged being a visitor in her home state. That Labor Day weekend game was the hottest game in history. It may still be to this day. Temperature at game time was 102 degrees. And we sat through that game for 3.5 quarters. Even at 68 years of age, Mom was determined to be there at that game. The sweat pouring out of both of us and going through who knows how much water. But to her, it was more important to be there beside her son, to support him and to protect him, to make sure he would be safe in that stadium. She was a huge Washington Redskins fan. In 1972, as Don told you, my father took us to the Rose Bowl Parade in California and to Disneyland on December the 29th. It was on December the 29th that I saw Mom smiling eye to eye. She really, truly looked happy at that moment. I looked at her, and then I heard her yell, "Yes!" in a quiet noise. Being only 9 at that time, I was very excited about seeing Mickey and Minnie go by in the parade too. But then I looked over at her, and she had this little black box up to her ear. It was a high technology device back in those days called an AM transistor radio. She informed me that Billy Kilmer had just thrown a 15-yard touchdown pass to Charlie Taylor, and the Redskins were leading 10-3 over them hated Cowboys. She had snuck that AM radio into the park against my dad's wishes. He had already told my brother and I, "You're not taking a radio to the Disney World. We're on vacation." The Skins went on to win that game 26-3, and I think that was her favorite part of the vacation. She did love politics, and as you all know, she had a favorite side. The one time as an adult, I remember her being very angered at me. I made a terrible mistake, she told me, and it took her a few weeks to get over it. The mistake I had made, you ask, was I voted for George Allen for governor in 1993. I really thought that being the son of the great Redskins coach would be okay to vote for it, but not in Mom's eyes. Politics ruled over sports. She did have the luck or the option to meet several political figures face to face. She met Richard Nixon, Rose Kennedy, Rosalind Carter, Doug Wilder, and Bill Clinton, to name a few. In 1991, she was instrumental in getting my 4th grade class to go to the Fresno airport to hear Gerald Ford speak. Don't know what she told the Secret Service men, but they escorted my entire class to the very front row that day. In 1998, living in Hilton Head, again as my brother has shared with you, my parents, and especially my mother, wanted to stalk Mr. Clinton when they knew he was in town. They did find a parked ambulance and car-sniffing dogs at the Arthur Hills Golf Course, so they knew he was there. There were only 2 holes close to the road, so they chose to go near the 13th tee, because Mom was not superstitious. Within minutes, Bill Clinton passed within 10 feet of my parents in his golf court, and he waved and said, "Happy New Year." My mom had the book in her hand, and she waved excitedly at him, and probably yelled too. He motioned to let her on the course to get her book signed. My mother and father quickly began to walk towards the president, but the Secret Service stopped my father and said, "Only her, sir, only her." He did sign the book, and she had the biggest grin on her face that you can imagine. To this day, I don't think we really know what Mr. Clinton told my mom, But perhaps the biggest question is, what did my mom say to Bill Clinton? She was a caretaker, and she did take care of us as often as she could, and tried to take care of us even as adults. After her passing, I do think she continued to take care of us. Last week, my brother, my father, and myself went to Illinois to rest her ashes. And oddly enough, we met a couple there, Joyce and Lawrence Wheeler, who were dear friends of my parents. They had driven 500 miles to say goodbye to Mom and to be there for my father, for my, tell my mom goodbye, and for us. They shared stories about Mom with us, which made that trip much easier. But the unique thing was nothing was planned, and yet we showed up at the same restaurant at basically the same time. We knew they were going to be at the service, but had no idea we were going to be able to spend an hour and a half with them for lunch and to share stories. I have to wonder if Mom had some impact in that, in some way, shape, or form. On the way home, I thought about returning home. Don and Don, son and father, were flying out in the morning to go back to Knoxville. My flight was not scheduled till 3 p.m. on Sunday. Unfortunately, the weather was calling to be bad. I called the airlines trying to change my flight, and I was told absolutely not. Can't change, you booked it on Priceline, you saved $1, you can't change your flight. But I thought about Mom and how persistent she was, continued to tell them that it really was necessary due to the situation. To make a long story short, they did change my flight. They flew me out at 6 a.m. Sunday morning. When I got home, I learned that my original flight at 3 had not only been postponed, but had been canceled. Tornadoes hit the area at 12 noon that morning, or that afternoon. Had I not changed my flight, I may very well still be there today trying to get home. At the graveyard, we were shown a picture, also shortly afternoon, where strong winds had knocked down a tree in the graveyard, and it blocked the road. Again, I have to wonder if Mom was getting us out of there quickly before these heavy storms hit. Mom, I do miss you. I wanted to close my words by having everyone stand and sing words to one of your favorite songs. But your oldest son, Don, vetoed me yesterday and told me I was not allowed to do that. So I'm going to simply say the words to you, Mom. Hail to the Redskins. Hail victory. Braves on the warpath. Fight for Azalea. Mom, I miss you and love you. Happy trails.
Wow. Okay, and now here is a grandson, Ben,
Hello, everyone.
who was able to be flown off the aircraft he was on the sea so that he could be here.
I believe I had our guidance in that because the United States Navy does not bend easily. Nana was one of the most amazing persons I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Never have I met someone so kind and selfless as her. I admire her ability to always put others before herself and to always see the bright side of things. She was a brave and selfless woman who will always be in my heart, and I'm glad that she's no longer in pain. I look forward to having this grapple rematch with her as she beat me and my wife quite well last time I saw her. I know she is watching over us, and I'm grateful to have her as a guardian. I'm going to read a letter from one of her colleagues, who was named Beard today. It says, I had the pleasure of working with Miss Winkler when she taught middle school at Fuqua School, where I was the guidance counselor. Known for her strong work ethic as a faculty member and her compassion toward her students and their parents, Miss Winkler was highly respected by all of us who worked with her. She had high expectations for 7th and 8th grade students. With her help, they quickly rose to her expectations, surprising themselves often. Her love of history and pride in her country was contagious. She not only taught these young people history, but instilled in them and demanded of them good citizenship. She knew how to have fun with her students, and it was obvious that she loved teaching. At the end of 8th grade, Asley Winkler's students left her class better citizens who were well prepared for high school. She left behind many legacies. Signed, Faye Gray.
Thank you, Ben.